Or a chumash is probably even better than the source sheets. Okay. All right. Before we start, just a note. I felt a little bit, and some other people actually spoke to me about the fact that we got sidetracked a lot during the last class. So what I'd like to do is ask you the following, please. If you have something very pressing and pertinent to say on what it is I'm saying, or to ask on what it is I'm saying, please feel free to do so. But other comments and other questions which are not actually necessary, please save them. I'll give time at the end of the class for any comments or questions, but not during the class. Yes?
Decades of experience, have you ever been anybody who didn't put what they had as pertinent
in all my years in the rabbinate, I never meet anyone who felt that what they had to say or ask wasn't pertinent. Probably not. All right, but give it some thought before you interrupt. All right, we're going to actually today, and we're using Chumashim. We're going actually today to explore two journeys that emerge beneath the surface in the stories that are before us, and we're actually going to be dealing with portions from Vayera and Lech Lecha for the next 2 weeks. I often introduce this year with a story. We were once, my wife and I, many years ago, we were once standing on line for a flight through Tower Air. Do you remember Tower Air? All right. So I'm standing on the flight, and someone comes up to me and says to me, "Do you want to sit in the Mahadran section?" I said, "Do I want to what?" "Do you want to sit in the Mahadran section?" And I said, "What's the Mahadran section?" "No movies," he said, "and no pritzus," which is immodest dress. My children, the youngest, who are twins, heard, and they said, "Movies and pizzas? We want the pizzas." And they started jumping up and down. Clearly, it was a breakdown in communication. I believe often that the Torah is telling us things that we don't hear or we don't see. And I've told you that before, and I believe it's the Pashat Pshat in the text that can often give us the greatest gifts. We're going to look at two journeys today, the journey of Avraham and the journey of Lot. And I believe if we follow it carefully, we will see that beneath the surface courses some very significant messages for our attention. We're going to begin in Vayera, in Perek Yud Tes, Pasuk Aleph. All right, and we're going to look from Pasuk Aleph to Pasuk Tet. Scene is as follows. This is one of the most disturbing scenes in the Torah. It's, in many ways, we're starting with the climax of Lot's journey rather than its beginning. One of the most disturbing moments in the Torah. What happens? Vayovo shnei malachim Sodoma. Two angels come to Sodom, and they encounter Lot. And Lot says, come to my home. And they don't want to, but he insists. That evening, suddenly, great crowd surrounds Lot's home. And Sodom doesn't allow guests. So they begin to knock on the door and they say, throw out the guests, give us the guests, let us deal with them. Lot turns to them and says, I'll not achai torem, please. Don't do this terrible thing. Here are my two daughters who have never been with anybody. Take them instead. That's what's said in the text. Now, whoa. How do you explain such aberrant behavior? What kind of explanation could you have for someone who would say, I want to protect my guests at the cost of my own children? So I believe that in order to understand, we have to back up. And we have to take a look at a pattern that emerges in Lot's journey to that moment. We begin, if you turn, well, I'm turning the page here. We begin with Breshit Perek Yud Gimel, Pasuk, Psukim Yud to Yud Gimel. So 19, 10 to 13. Now the scene is as follows, while you're looking for the page. Scene is as follows. Avraham and Lot are parting ways. They've traveled from Haran together, and apparently the testimony of the text is that their flocks are too great to graze in the same place. There are other reasons perhaps for the parting, and Avraham says to Lot, let us part in friendly fashion. You choose where you want to go. I'll choose where I want to go, and we'll be in different places, and everything will be fine. We can't be together. So the Torah tells us, Vayisa Lot esenav, vayaris kol kikar hayadin. Lot lifts his eyes, and he sees the plain surrounding the Jordan. And this is particularly interesting because the area he's looking at now, which the Torah says is fertile, is the Dead Sea area, which is nothing. Right? So that chapter 13, sentence 10. Yud Gimel Yud. So Vayivchar lo Lot in Pasuk 11. Vayivchar lo Lot is called Kikar HaYarden. Lot chooses to live in Kikar HaYarden. And then in Pasuk at Beis you find the following statement. Avram Yoshev be'eretz Canaan, Velot Yoshev be'eretz Hakikor, Vaye'ehal ad Sodom. Avraham lives in the land stays in the land of Canaan. Lot goes to the cities of the plain, and then that strange phrase, Vaye'ehal ad Sodom. Literally, he tented until Sodom. Now, what's strange about that phrase? Everything. Number one, the verb, Vaye'ehal. We've noted before in the text that the Torah usually uses one of two words to speak about someone living somewhere, right? Yoshev or lagur, leshevet or lagur. To settle or to be unsettled. Lagur means I'm staying in a place where I am not comfortable yet. And Vayeshev indicates that I'm in a permanent place or a place where I'm comfortable. What's the Vaye'ehal? What's the word in that verb? Well, so what does it tell you about? Is that permanent or impermanent? It's even more impermanent than lagur, right? In other words, my tent, I'm tenting to Sodom. Now, then it says Vaye'ehal ad. The word ad is a very unusual word in the Hebrew language, according to the halacha. It is an internally ambiguous word. What does until mean? The rabbis ask. Is until ad va'ad bichlal or ad v'lo ad bichlal? Right? Does it up to and including or up to, right? If the law is that you can't have a sukkah 20 amos high, let's say, does that mean that it's only kosher if it's up to 19.9999, or can it be 20? Vaye'ehal ad Sodom. So what's the Torah telling me about Lot right now in those three words? He's not sure. He's not. He is. And look at the next sentence. The Anshe Sodom ra'im v'chatoim l'Hashem miyod. The Torah testifies these are evil people, terrible people in Sodom. So what's happening? You have Lot coming to Sodom, attracted by the wealth, attracted by the richness, attracted by all that Sodom has to offer. But they're ra'im v'chatoim, and he's coming from Avram's house. He can't do that. So what you do is he doesn't know what to do. He goes up to Sodom. Is he in? Is he out? He's not sure. Not sure. And one day in, one day out, one foot in, one foot out. Doesn't know. That's where he is right now. He lives in the shadow of Sodom. Now, follow the pattern. We're going to go to the next parak, to the next time the Torah talks to me about Lot. And that is parak Yud Daled 14, sentence 12. Now, the scene, again, while you're finding the page, the scene is as follows. The scene is that Lot has been taken captive in a war between a series of kings, and he is captured and he is taken, and all of his rechush, everything that's with him is taken. He's captive. He's a hostage. Familiar, right? Okay, so what happens is Avraham runs to save him, and does. But before that, the Torah describes Lot being captured. And look at what it says. Vayikhu es Lot ve'es rechusho ben achia Avram vayelechu. They took Lot and all of his belongings, the son of the brother of Avram, meaning Avram's nephew, v'hu yoshev bistom. Why does the Torah have to tell me that? Right? I know because the Torah is telling me that he's no longer Vaye'ehal ad Sodom. That something has happened already. He is now sucked in, and he now is part of Sodom. Now let's look at the last moment that the Torah describes. Take a look at Bereshit, Perek Yud Tet, Pasuk Aleph. And you see how we're actually skipping numerous prakim to see this pattern. Baruch Hashem, it was years ago where I noted the pattern, and I don't know how I did it, because the proof is so far apart. But take a look at the first pasuk in chapter 19. And here we have the introductory sentence to that disturbing scene with which we began. Vayavo shnei malachim Sodoma ba'erev. The malachim have come Sodoma in the evening. V'lot yoshev b'sha'ar Sodom. Who used to stay in the gates, right? You say it in Eshes Chayil. Noda ba'sha'orim balo b'shivtoim ziknei aretz. Right? Your husband is well known, where he is sitting at the gates with the top of the people, very, very important people. So Lot isn't now just Bistom. Lot is a big shot in Sodom. Lot is someone sitting at the gates. Do you see, step by step, what's happening? Now we can begin to understand the aberrant behavior that we spoke about before. Lot is not a terrible person. He's not a bad person. He's weak, and he is trying to do something impossible. He is trying to reconcile two irreconcilable worlds. I bring guests into my home. Who am I? Where did I get that from? Right? I throw out my daughters. Where do we get that from? So, I'm trying to take those two worlds and put it together. I'm saying that I can live in Sodom and still be Avram's nephew. Can't do it. And that's what the Torah is telling us. What the Torah is telling us is that as we travel through our world, we should be aware of the things that are irreconcilable with what we believe. And here is a situation where Lot, and Lot makes two very, very serious mistakes. Mistake number one is he believes you can live in the shadow of Sodom and remain unchanged. Right? And we saw that he changed. Second is that he believes he can reconcile those two irreconcilable worlds. And he just can't. Okay? Yeah.
Was Lot affected by being rescued by Avraham in the war together with Sodom?
We have no way of knowing. Well, question, was he affected? We have no way of knowing. The Torah doesn't tell us.
What do you think?
What do I think? I think he probably was not. I think he probably still, this is a man who is weak. You see, and part of his weakness is that he doesn't recognize his own weakness. In other words, he really believes. I don't think Avraham, for example, would have tented unto Sodom. Why? Because Avraham knows you can't sit in the shadow of Sodom and not somehow be affected by it. Lot doesn't get it. And I think someone who doesn't get it, even if he's saved by his uncle. All right, now let's take a look at Avraham. Turn the page. Well, don't turn the page. I've got the page. All right? Take a look at the onset of Avram's journey. Perek Yud Bet Pasuk Aleph. Famous pasuk. We know it. We can say it by heart. Vayomer Hashem el Avraham, Lech lecha me'artzecha u'mimoladetecha u'mbeis avicha. Separate yourself. Avram, Lech lecha, go. And note that the words are out of order, right? It should have said, Lech lecha mibeis avicha mimoladetecha u'me'artzecha. It should have said, leave your father's home, the place where you were born, and your land, right? It's going in the opposite order. Your land, why is it doing that? So numerous commentaries say it's because we're not talking only about a physical leaving, we're talking about a psychological and philosophical leaving. It's easiest to leave my land. It's harder to leave my birthplace. It's even harder to leave the home of my father. And that's why it's not in descending order, it's in ascending order, because it's not just a physical journey, it's a spiritual journey. Set yourself apart. But Chazal say that this statement is actually more complex than it seems, because it's one of those statements where you have what I call a dialectical phrase. He's being told to be part of and apart from at the same time. What do the rabbis say? Rabbis say, on one level, what can you compare Avram at this moment to? You can compare him to a beautiful jar of perfume that's sitting in the corner. As long as it stays in the corner, nobody benefits. If somebody picks it up and walks around the room, many people benefit. So Avram is being told, say Chazal, leave to make a difference. And by the way, it comes from the text too. What does Hashem say to him? Hashem says to him, "V'nivruchu v'kol kol mishpacho so'adama." Right? So all the nations of the world will be blessed through you. I'm not telling you to shut out the world. I'm telling you have to have a balance, Hashem is saying. You have to have a balance. You have to be apart from and a part of at the same time. And that challenge is monumental. That's really where Lot failed. He wasn't able to strike the balance because he was trying to reconcile what wasn't reconcilable. But Avram's being told, your mission is to be part of and apart from at the same time. And we see, as Avram's story goes on, we see Avram interfacing with various figures and various people and various circumstances. We interfaces with Paro and Avimelech, and sometimes some of the commentaries say he makes mistakes. When he tells Sarah to be his wife, to say she's his sister, some commentaries say that it was a sin. Some say no, then try to explain it. But the fact is, he's interfacing with the world, and everything is, he's not totally separate. He's part of and will even try to help the world, as we see when he argues for Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Again, which is that far to the extreme, and yet Avram's praying to God. And by the way, if you read it, it's a little bit chutzpahdik what he's doing, am I right? In other words, God, Chalila, God forbid, God, you should act this way, right? In other words, and then we'll take a look at that interchange at another point, but that's an example of him interfacing with the world. But there comes, I think, one turning point. And that turning point, strangely enough, is a turning point that we are very, very familiar with. And take a look at Perek Yudbet, Pasuk Aleph. Perek Yudbet 12, sentence 1. Okay? Oh no, I'm sorry. No. Wrong. Take a look at 22, sentence 1. I was sending you back to the Lech Lecha. 22, Chaf Bet, Pasuk Aleph. Vayehi achar hadvarim ha'ela, v'Elokim nisa es Avraham. It was after these things, and God tested Avraham. What's this introducing? The Akedah. Okay. Now let me ask a question I've asked you before. Does the Torah follow chronological order? If you say yes or no, you're not right. All right? It's, as I've told you before, the Torah follows chronological order except when it doesn't. And what I mean by that is the rule is it's chronological. The rule is that Avram comes before Yitzchak and Yitzchak comes before Yaakov, and the stories follow each other. There are some points in the text where some commentaries, not all, where some commentaries will say we can't understand the flow as it exists and we have to move things around. The Ramban, for example, doesn't accept that anywhere. Nachmanides says, Ramban says, the Torah is always chronological. I don't accept ein mukdam u'meuchar b'Torah, and I'll show you how. And he tries to explain every time that the commentaries feel that it should be shifted. Problem is, we learn as children ein mukdam u'meuchar b'Torah, and we think we come to the conclusion that Torah is not chronological. Of course, it's chronological, which leads to a very interesting question. Take a look at the pasuk I told you to look at. What words are superfluous? Chaf Beis, right? Perek Chaf Beis, pasuk Aleph. Vayehi achar hadvarim ha'ele. Why does the Torah have to tell me this is happening after that? Right? Doesn't make any sense. If it's chronological, you don't have to tell me that. It's happening after that. That's what I'm going to assume. So what might be the reason for the Torah ever using that phrase? To what? To connect, correct. To connect what is about to occur with what came before. Okay, so let's say that's what it means, right? That in this case, the Akedah is connected to what came before it. But there's a problem. Look at Perek 21, and it's just one page earlier, beginning with sentence 22, Chaf Bet, Perek Chaf Aleph, Pasuk Chaf Bet. Vayehi bo'es hahi, vayomer Avimelech, Vayomer Avimelech ufichos hartzva'o el Avraham, Elokim imcha b'chol asher to'aseh. Avimelech, the king of the Philistines, comes to Avraham, and he says, Avraham, I see God is with you. And now what I want to do is, I want to make an agreement with you. Li ulanini ulanechti. Not only between us, but between our children and our grandchildren. V'nichras abris. And we should make this agreement a bris. Bris is solid. It's a covenant. We should make it a bris between us, that we will not do each other harm, that we will have this time together. And how does Avram respond? He agrees. He remonstrates Avimelech for some things that happened, and we get a sense of Avimelech. Avimelech is, and then as an ancillary figure in the text, Avimelech emerges, I think, not as someone bad, but someone who is a king that allows his kingdom to be bad. In other words, that's what Avram says to him, right? You don't come to a come someplace and all of a sudden they're asking you who that woman is, right? And here he says to Avimelech, why did you steal my wells? And Avimelech says, I don't know. It never happened. What do you mean you don't know? You're a king. So anyway, so Avimelech is tenuous. But Avram is very clear. If you take a look towards the bottom of the paragraph, Vayikach Avram sonu vakar, vayichrusu shnehem bris. They make a covenant. Okay, now, what is the connection between making a covenant with Avimelech and the Akedah? Right? So you have an answer.
You see in our time, you make an alliance with your enemies, or people who are potentially enemies, your children are going to be cut off.
Whoa. All right, did you hear that? You make an alliance with your enemies and your children will be korbanot. The Rashbam agrees with you. The Rashbam, who I've told you is my favorite classical commentary because he stays to Pashat Pshat, says there is a connection. And he therefore interprets the Akedah in a revolutionary way, in a way that nobody else does, I don't think, but it's certainly stands true to the flow of the text. Says the Rashbam, Atah, God is turning to Avram and saying, Atah nitga'eta ben shelcha, you were callous and indifferent with the welfare of your child. Now take that child to Par Moriah and see what it would be to lose him. Wow. Powerful, no? And as you said, very, very familiar to us. What the Rashbam is saying, and Chazal say that this bris that Avram makes is, by the way, not good. He should never have made it. The Rashbam is telling us that the Akedah is the result of the bris. God is basically saying to him, I have to sensitize you. You're not seeing the preciousness of your child the way you're supposed to. Which means that Avram until now has been dancing a dance, trying to be apart from and a part of. Here he steps over the line. Right? Here what happens is he in his desire to have an effect on others and be with others and have peace with, he steps over the line, loses sight of where the balance is of being part from and a part of, and that's why the Akedah occurs according to the Rashbam.
What's the shabbat of the Akedah? We hold the Akedah up as a symbol, a rock, whatever, and now you're telling me really basically not so.
Well, okay, very interesting question. He says, what's the shift? First of all, let's understand. I don't think the Rashbam is dismissing all of the other explanations of the Akedah, because the Akedah is very difficult to understand. Why is God testing someone he knows is going to do something, right? So he's not rejecting those, but he's saying there's another layer. But even if this was the only layer, I would still say the Akedah is a pivotal moment, because it's the moment where Avraham is told, don't step over the line. And that's very important, as I'll make clearer later. Okay? So what happens? So Avraham, therefore, and at this point, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying is, you know, that dance you're doing between being apart from him and a part of, you've stepped over the line, you've gone too far to one extreme, you've got to pull back. And what's fascinating is that Avraham, from this moment on, changes. If you take a look at the text, Avraham before the Akedah is preaching to the world. After the Akedah, two things happen. He buys a plot for Sarah's grave, and he sends Eliezer out to find a wife for Yitzchak. You don't see any preaching to the world in Chayei Sarah. Basically, he's pulled in. Now, do I think he's rejecting the fact that he should preach to the world? No. I think he was so sensitized to this that he's saying, I can't preach to the world at the cost of my child, or at the cost of my own, or at the cost of my future. Therefore, he pulls in and he deals totally with his family in Parshas Chayesar. There's nothing dealing with the outside because he's been pulled back. Yes?
I've heard that the main problem with his deal with Avimelech was making a deal not just for himself, but for his children and grandchildren.
That's correct.
But other than that, would it have been okay to make a deal just for himself?
Well, all right. The question is, would it have been okay to make a deal just for himself as opposed to intergenerationally? And the Rashbam points to that intergenerational as the issue. The fact is that I believe a bris with Avimelech would have been wrong under any circumstances. Under any circumstances. This was even worse because he was endangering his child. And we'll see when we get to Yitzchak, we'll see that Yitzchak sort of does better. I think we've spoken about that once. But now, so I said Avram pulls in and starts dealing with his family. Now, the two major events that occur, I told you, he buys a plot for Sarah, and he sends Eliezer out to find a wife for Yitzchak. How do those events play into this journey? Right? Is there anything that they add to Avram's journey of being apart from and a part of? Take a look, if you will, at one of my favorite sections of the text, because I believe it's just amazing what lies beneath the surface. Take a look at Perek Chav Gimel, the beginning of Parshas Chayesara. Perek 23, Pasuk Aleph, and read to yourselves, well, let's say from Pasuk Aleph to Pasuk Yud, from 1 to 10. That's enough to get the idea. And I'm going to ask you a question on it, so read it carefully. Yes?
Just going back for a second, what is wrong with the bris between the two of them?
What's wrong with the bris is because, number one, the rabbis say, this was land that Avram was supposed to bequeath to his own children, and he's making a covenant with people on the land, which he shouldn't. But I believe it's deeper than that. You don't make a covenant like that with Avimelech. Avimelech is not evil, but he's not someone you can trust. Because he's shown you can't trust him. Basically, he's pushed you out of his land. Basically, his servants steal your wells. In fact, Avram remonstrates him right in the beginning of that conversation and says, why did you steal my wells? And Avimelech says, well, all right, so this is very, 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 very tough, right? In other words, under what circumstances do you make what deal, right? I thank God I wasn't in the seat that had to make that decision, right? How do you save the hostages and at the same time defeat Hamas? I mean, all right, anyway, all the hostages came back, which is something great, and which I never believed would happen. I never believed that they would give back all the hostages. The live ones. Well, I never believed they would get back the live ones because I felt that they would always, that's their trump card, right? That's their bargaining chip. Okay, right. Now you read the beginning of Parshas Chayesara? I'm going to ask you a question. If you were going to write this narrative, how many sentences do you think you would need? What?
Yeah.
4, 3, right? Avraham needed a grave for Sarah. He went to the Bnei Ches. They told him to do it Ephron. He bargained with Ephron, and he got the Machpelah. 4 sentences, maybe. The Torah dedicates more text to this than it does to the Akedah. There's one line more in to this event than the Akedah. Why is it so important? What's happening? So Chazal will say there are a lot of things. Number one, it's the first time we see that we're acquiring a piece of Eretz Yisrael. But there's something else happening here. There is a battle taking place. It's a quiet battle. It's one that you miss. Take a look at Pasuk Daled. Avram turns, as he begins this negotiation for Maras HaMachpelah, he turns to Bnei Ches and he describes himself. And he says, Ger v'toshav anochi imachem. I am a ger v'toshav, a stranger and a citizen together with you. Now that's one of those dialectical phrases that I told you about in the Torah itself. Lagur means to be strange. Lashevet means to be comfortable. What are you? Are you a ger or a toshav? You can't be both, can you? So what's he saying? So the rabbis, some commentaries say that he's saying, I was a ger and now I'm a toshav. Or if you let me be a toshav, I'll be a toshav. I don't think so. And in fact, I think that, and I thought this myself, Baruch Hashem, and then I saw that Rabbi Soloveitchik says it even better than I do. All right, what is it? What ger v'toshav? If you ask me the best sociological definition of the Jew across history, you can't get better than that. Ger v'toshav. I am, Avraham says, a stranger and a citizen together with you. That's my balance. I am part of and apart from at the same time. It's a very thin line, and that's the line I'm walking. Right. And what happens? Take a look at the next line. Vayanu b'nei Ches Avram lemor lo. The children of Ches turn to Avram and they say to him, Shma'enu Adoni, Nisi Elokim Ata B'sochenu, B'mivchar Kvarenu Kvar Esmeisecha. What are they saying? Avram, what are you hacking us a chinik for? Right? What are you giving us? Why do you have to say you're a ger v'toshav? Nisi Elokim Ata B'sochenu. You are a prince to God among us. B'mivchar, what, you need a separate cemetery? You need a separate grave? B'mivchar kvarenu kvares mesecha. They're not just being nice here. What are they trying to do? They're trying to suck him in. They're saying to him, you don't have to hold yourself apart. You don't have to be a ger v'toshav. Be one of us. We're being generous. We'll give you whatever you want. And Avram says no. And it goes back and forth over the next few sentences. And all that is happening, if you look in the text, what the Torah says is it happens, le'enei b'nei Ches, it keeps repeating, le'enei b'nei Ches, l'fnei am haaretz. It's all happening, not privately, but it's all happening and everybody is watching. Everybody's watching. Why? Because they want to see what comes, what happens. Is Avram going to fail or is he going to succeed? And what you see in this paragraph, I believe, is Hashem doesn't tell him what to do, right? Remember, he comes to this of his own volition. Is that Avram, towards the end of his career, is saying, I now understand what God wants from me. I now understand that I'm supposed to be a ger v'toshav. That I have to walk that line. When he told me Lech Lecha, it was to be a part of and apart from at the same time, and that's the line I have to walk. And Bnei Ches are trying to destroy that. And this battle between Avram and Bnei Ches is so significant that if it would have gone the other way, God forbid, you and I would not be sitting here today. We would be Hittites, and I don't know many Hittites. Right? That's what would have happened. So Avraham withstands the pressure to give up that balance, and therefore he is able to succeed. Some say this is right. Absolutely. I believe this is Some say that this is one of his tests, and I believe, no question, I believe it is. In some ways, I think it's the greatest of his tests, because, again, he's acting on his own, and he's saying, God doesn't have to tell me what to do here. I know what I have to do. And I'm going to take you one step further. One step further. The next event that takes place is he sends Eliezer to find a wife for Yitzchak. And what are his instructions to Eliezer? Go back to where I came from and bring a wife from there. Hold on a minute. What? You're supposed to leave. You were told that you're sending Eliezer back to the very place that God told you to leave. What are you doing? And I remember when I first heard this as a kid, I said, well, Avraham doesn't want his son to intermarry. But guess what? There ain't no Jews anywhere at this point, right? Anyone he marries is going to be intermarriage. So why is Avraham sending Eliezer back to where he was told to leave to find a wife for Yitzchak? So there are all sorts of possible answers. There are those who say he's saying to him, go back to my family, get someone from my family. But interestingly enough, Avram never says that. Eliezer says it when he's talking to Lavan and Bethuel. He then says it because he knows that will be very good diplomatically to say. But Avram never says it, but maybe that's what he meant. Some say that the people of Canaan were worse than the people he left behind. And the problem was that the people left behind were so iffy that he could have been sucked in, as opposed to Canaan, where he looks around and he says, I can't be part of that, like Sodom. But I believe there's another possible answer. Avram turns and he says, I am frightened. I'm scared. What am I scared about? I'm scared because I was able to maintain the balance because of my journey. I came from somewhere else. I came here. I didn't grow up as part of the Canaanite world, and I was able to withdraw when I needed to withdraw. I'm looking at my son Yitzchak. He was born here. And Avram doesn't know this yet, I think, but he's never going to leave. He is the only one of the patriarchs who never leaves Eretz Yisrael. Avram says he's not going to be able to maintain that balance. So what do I have to do? I have to get someone for him that takes the same journey that I took. I have to take someone from the land where I came from and have them travel here and be the foil for Yitzchak, be the one that'll keep Yitzchak on the right path. And by the way, who sees the world more clearly, Yitzchak or Rivka? There you go. There you go. It's Rivka, who comes from outside, who is able to maintain that balance. So I believe that the two events that close Avram's career underscore this very balance. And what we've seen, and this I'll sum up and then I'll take any questions or comments, is that two people were challenged with the same challenge. The challenge was to be part of and apart from, to be a ger v'toshav. Lot failed, Avram succeeded. And the Torah is telling us of those journeys beneath the surface because it wants us to learn. And what we're learning is, this is, by the way, our challenge and the challenge of Jews across the ages. On the one hand, have we picked up things from an outside world? Sure have. I've told you, cholent isn't in the Torah. Gefilte fish is, right? These are things that, Sfardim, Ashkenazim, right? This all is a result of where we came from. We picked up things. However, we've managed, at least a kernel of us, to stay apart too. And that's the challenge. And I actually spoke on this last evening to a group to a seminary crowd, a group of, and I said to them, you're going to have a world where it's even harder than ours. Because your world, the outside world, is invading in ways that it never invaded ours. Right? These kids are growing up, that privacy is out the window. Everything is online. Everything is there. Everybody, and lives are destroyed online, by the way. Kids are bullied online. It gets horrible. And if you're bullied online, it doesn't just stay with the bully. It then goes to the world, because the bully's going to take it and send it out. So that's the challenge. The challenge is, how do we, ourselves and our children and our grandchildren, learn to maintain the balance and to say, I'm a ger v'toshav. Okay? I'll take any questions. Yes?
So it's interesting that you have 3 shalshelet in Sefer Bereshis, Vayismameah with Lot, and then you have Vayomer with Eliezer, and then you have Vayima'en
That's right.
with Yosef. And all 3
Our hesitation.
times.
Right.
If the decision would have been different, our whole history would have
Right.
been
Okay. So she is saying that the trup, the trup is a tune that we sing, the notes. Shalsheled is a very unusual note. It's a note that it's a pazer, which is the longest note 3 times. And it means, you're saying it means a change. I also feel it means hesitation. That in those moments, the person or people involved are 3 times are. It's when Eliezer, first
First is Lot by Yismameah with Sodom. And
first it's Lot when he's told he has to go out of Sodom and he hesitates. The second is Eliezer when he has to find a wife for Yitzchak, and there are those who say he wanted his own daughter to marry Yitzchak. It's a medrash. And then the third time it happens is when Yosef is propositioned by his master's wife, and he refuses. And she's saying every time that occurs, the shalshelet, it's a pivotal moment where if the decision would have gone the other way, again, we wouldn't be here. And I also believe it also shows hesitation, that each one of those cases, the person was not sure.
So now Lot was the son of Haran.
Yes.
And Haran himself was the one who said, well, if Avraham comes out alive, then I'll go. He himself was very ambivalent.
Correct. So each one of, right, now, and by the way, again, I don't have time for this, but what's the difference between Haran and his father Terah? Or his brother Terah? What's that? No, it's very interesting to think about. Okay, yes.
So, apropos of the problem of the bridge with Avimelech, is there any message in there with respect to the age-old problem that we have had since time immemorial, whether we engage with, say, the conservatives and reform, whether we engage with interfaith dialogue or not, or we do like a Tarek.
All right. Oh, wait, right. Okay. You're asking a very interesting question, a very good question, which is, understand how you draw that balance will define who you are Jewishly, right? In other words, if I'm a part of, then I'm more this way, and if I'm apart from, right? So we believe we've got the balance, but everybody else believes they've got the balance too. I think that it does tell us things. First of all, I think it cautions us concerning the agreements that we make with people that are outside us and the world outside us. What can I allow to come in, and what do I have to keep out? And it's speaking to us today in a very literal way when it talks about the covenants or not covenants or agreements we're making with people that want to kill us. All right, that's number one. Number two, and again, Yitzchak doesn't fall into the same trap. Number two, I will say, just give you my opinion on interfaith dialogue. In the 1950s, the prediction in America was the Orthodox movement was going to die, and the future of Judaism was the conservative and reform. Today, if you look at American Jewry, I mean, unfortunately, it's tragic, but the main threat to American Jewry isn't conservative and reform Judaism. They're on the ropes, and it's assimilation. It's the outside world. And that's a battle that we all have to fight. So I believe whereas we were very, very careful earlier on in having interfaith dialogue, I believe here we should be more lenient. I used to, when I was a rabbi in Potomac and in Englewood, there were times I would be invited to speak to conservative groups, and I always took it because I would always have someone come up to me after I spoke and say, I didn't realize an Orthodox rabbi would say that. They don't understand who we are. So if we stay totally apart, there's no chance of us changing them. So that's what I think. Yes.